former vice president and the apparent Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, has broken his silence, today taking on that sexual assault allegation from a former Senate aide in a groundbreaking interview, one-on-one with Mika Brzezinski on Morning Joe, right here on MSNBC. Biden categorically denied that anyone has ever accused him of sexual assault or filed a harassment complaint, saying he still believes all women who say they are victims and that they should be heard, and that their claims should be investigated, but that in this case, it has been investigated, and he says it's just not true.
Would you please go on the record with the American people? Did you sexually assault Tara Reade?
No, it is not true. I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened, and it didn't. It never happened.
Why not release any complaints that had been made against you during your Senate career?
I'm prepared to do that. The best of my knowledge, there's been no complaints made against me in terms of my Senate career, in terms of my office and anything that's been run. Look, this is an open book. There's nothing for me to hide. Nothing at all.
You were unequivocal, Mr. Vice President, back in 2018 during the Kavanaugh controversy and hearings, and you said that women should be believed.
Look, from the very beginning, I've said believing women means taking the woman's claims seriously. When she steps forward and then vet it, look into it. That's true in this case as well. Women have a right to be heard, and the press should rigorously investigate claims they make. I'll always uphold that principle. But in the end, in every case, the truth is what matters. And in this case, the truth is the claims are false. I'm not going to question her motive. I'm not going to get into that at all. I don't know why she's saying this. I don't know why after 27 years, all of a sudden this gets raised. I don't understand it. But I'm not going to go in and question her motive. I'm not going to attack her. She has a right to say whatever she wants to say. But I have a right to say, look at the facts. Check it out.
Are women to be believed? Are women to be believed unless it pertains to you?
Look, women are to be believed given the benefit of the doubt. If they come forward and say something that they said happened to them, they should start off with the presumption they're telling the truth. Then you have to look at the circumstances and the facts. And the facts in this case do not exist. They never happened. And there's so many inconsistencies in what has been said in this case. So yes, look at the facts. And I assure you, it did not happen, period. Period.
And one note here, NBC News has been talking to Tara Reade for the last few weeks, has reached out to her and asked her to respond, to come on camera, and to respond to now what Joe Biden has said. We have not yet heard back. Hope we do. Joining me now, Jennifer Palmieri, former communications director for the Obama White House and the Clinton 2016 campaign, and NBC News correspondent Mike Memoli, who covers the Biden campaign and has been working for several weeks on this story as well. Mike, let's talk about what we know, and first of all, what Joe Biden answered and what he didn't, if you think there's anything he did not address today.
Well, Andrea, I think it's important to lay out the timeline here because this story has really been developing slowly but steadily over the past month against the backdrop, of course, of this global health crisis that has been dominating everyone's attention. So it begins in March with a very personal but a very politically charged allegation from Tara Reade, of course, who had worked in Joe Biden's office in the early 90s. Now, a year ago, she had come forward along with other women to say that Joe Biden had made physical contact in a way that made her feel uncomfortable. But in late March, she did an interview at first with a podcaster talking about what she said was an allegation of a sexual assault. Now, the Biden campaign quickly denied that allegation, but also said that reporters should be challenging and vetting this claim that women have a right to be heard and that those facts should be vetted thoroughly. And we here at NBC News were among those who did so. With great credit to Ali Vitale, we spoke to Tara and also to some of those who she said would corroborate her allegation. We produced that initial report on April 12th, and at the time what we were reporting was that 3 of the 5 people she said she had shared this account with of varying details did not recall those conversations. Separately, we also talked to a friend and another former Senate staffer who did say that there was some discussion with Tara about an allegation of either harassment or assault. But again, very clearly, this became a political story as more and more Democrats were being asked about this, including a number of the women who are being considered for vice president. Now, it's important to note as well, Andrea, if we were on the campaign trail, I think you would be among the first on the rope line weeks ago trying to ask the vice president about this. But of course, he's here in Delaware and hasn't been able to address this. He's been doing a number of interviews, but the subject had not come up until today. So now we get into where this story is going and some of the unanswered questions. The Biden campaign today wanted to be forward-looking, and it's important to note that when Tara Reade had told us that she filed some sort of personnel complaint with the Senate at the time, she told us it was about harassment and not assault. The Biden campaign saying today they were directing the Senate to ask the National Archives where such a complaint they say would have existed to produce it, their view, of course, being that it wouldn't exist because this did not happen. Now we're getting into a discussion, of course, about the vice president's personal Senate papers, which are here in Delaware at the University of Delaware, and the questions of whether he should be allowing those to be made public. It's important to note that according to the Biden campaign, those papers that exist at the University of Delaware do not include any personnel documents. And so that's, I think, where this discussion is going forward. What kind of documentation could exist that would either corroborate Ms. Reade's claim or support the vice president's contention, very clearly made today that nothing happened in the way that's been described.
And to both of you, and Jen Palmieri, I wanted to play Tina Chen, who, of course, was Michelle Obama's White House Chief of Staff. She's now the CEO of Time's Up. And she was on with Stephanie Ruhle in the 9 o'clock hour right here. And this was her reaction to the Biden interview.
You know, we're in a pivotal moment, you know, in our country with candidates charged with sexual assault, and what they need to do is treat them with the seriousness that they deserve, treat allegations seriously and have them investigated, go directly to the people and say, you know, and address them, and call for full transparency, which Vice President Biden did today. We need the same transparency, Stephanie, for every candidate running for president.
And Jen, as Mike was just pointing out, Ali Vitale, Mike Memoli have been talking to Tara Reade, and so far, among the 5 people she said she spoke to contemporaneously 27 years ago, only 1 recollects a conversation. 3 said there was no recollection. Only 1, who would not let us use her name, does recall a sexual assault allegation back then from Tara Reade, but none of the others do. Her brother spoke to 2 other news organizations and initially did not recollect it at the time, as she describes it now, and then called back to supposedly clarify. So there are a lot of variations in the sourcing for this that we've all been working through.
Yeah, and as you know, Andrea, I've been through situations like this on the inside of the campaigns on many, many times. So let me give you an assessment of probably where the Biden campaign thinks they are. He had to address this serious allegation. He needed to do it. He did it. I think if you're the Biden campaign, you think he did it well this morning. But we're not going to resolve something like this in one interview. We now have differing accounts, right? He has said his version of accounts. It didn't happen unequivocally. So we're all looking, the press is looking for records, right? Where do you go for that? So you go, as Biden rightly pointed out, you go to the Senate office where somebody would file a complaint like this. I'm not an expert on the timeline here, but I believe Tara Reade said that she did file a complaint with the Senate office. And this is protected from Senate personal offices in order to protect the staff, give them a space to go to that's outside of their office. So that is the right place to look for records, and that's what the Biden campaign has said they're going to do. It also happens there are the University of Delaware records, and press don't like it when you give them one answer in one day. They want to push for more, and so now they're asking about the records in Delaware. I've had some experience in helping politicians wrap up their elected official records, and I think Biden is right that those are light not likely to contain any kind of personnel records. That's not what they're about. They're about the senator's papers. They're about the senator's legacy. But, I think that's why we're in this situation now where you have people talking about the Delaware records. But the first case, the first place to go is, in fact, the Senate office that he has asked to look to see not just whether there's a complaint from Tara Reade, but whether there's any complaints. And I think Tina Chen is right in Time's Up that that's asking for full transparency.
And Jen, there were, I believe, 2 major national interviews that Joe Biden did since this first arose, and then a number of local interviews, local television interviews in the last 2 weeks where no one asked about it. So no one has asked him about this in a national interview until today. And Mika Brzezinski, she went after the issue and the questions over and over for 20 minutes. Do you think, against that and against the fact that the President of the United States, whom he is presumably going to be running against, has at least 12 credible assault allegations that he has denied, but that this is being flogged really continuously by the Trump campaign, by Don Jr., how does this become a campaign issue? Briefly, if you could.
So Biden has handled the way you're supposed to, which is he's spoken to it directly, and there is a record that you can go and check, and he has said that record should be checked, and he has said you should release all of that, right? That is what you want someone to do. Donald Trump has done none of that except to say that all of it is true. Nothing ever said bad against him is true, and so I'm sure the Trump campaign will try to use, Don Jr. has already started to use this. But Biden, but Biden needs to give his supporters the assurance, and Americans who are open to voting for him, that he's dealt with this. And I think he did really well today. They're not going to get over the story in one day, but they are on the path to. I believe they're on the path to doing that.
Jen Palmieri, Mike Memoli, thank you both so much. And we're back with Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. Sorry to have lost you for a moment there. I was asking you about Joe Biden and whether you think that his campaign can recover from this situation.
Andrea, I think he can in the eyes of the voters. I have no doubt that the Trump team will continue to try to do something out of this because they're very desperate right now. But the vice president said in no uncertain terms, this did not happen. The staff, leadership, men and women who worked with him in the Senate at that time, who knew Ms. Reade, said this didn't happen and there was never a complaint filed. A number of press organizations who have done fantastic work in outing claims of sexual assault and harassment against Democrats, Republicans, politicians, entertainment figures have investigated this significantly and have not found it to be substantiated. And now we have, in the vice president's statement this morning, a pretty clear direction. If there was a complaint filed, the staffer said that she filed a complaint. She has her entire personnel file, but does not have the complaint. But if it was filed, it will be at the National Archives with the records of the personnel office that handled the complaints at the time. And VP Biden says he wants the archives to turn over anything that would regard that complaint. He feels confident there's nothing there. And I do think that anyone who has an allegation like this has to be taken seriously. So yes, reporters should dig into it. And yes, we should get the files from the archives. But I think he'll be able to get by this in the minds of American voters.